It's time for Last Call at the 1420 Sports Bar. Wind down your weekend as we discuss issues in the world of sports. Take a look back at the week that was and look ahead to some games of the upcoming week. Get a couple more at the bar and let's get into a little Last Call. Welcome to the Last Call, the 1420 Sports Bar, brought to you by SeatGeek.com. The SeatGeek app, use promo code 1420pod at SeatGeek.com today and save yourself $20 on your first purchase. I'm joined once again. We got together with the baseball tour earlier on in the spring here. We're joined once again by Captain Lou Gamlin of the Captain Lou Extravaganza, another great show on the Belly Up network of shows. Lou, my friend, how are you doing tonight, my friend? You got the Chiefs jersey sporting tonight. What's going on, man?
Well, getting ready for hockey for the playoffs, best time of year if you're a hockey fan. I couldn't find the foil, but getting ready to go. Tomorrow night it all starts, man, and there is going to be some great matchups. I tell you, to me, it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be wide open like it always is for the Stanley Cup playoffs.
The first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs, for people who don't like hockey and don't understand hockey, I think they should tune in for the next week and a half because the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs upsets galore, and it just goes on and on no matter what. And it's always great. Lou, what's your, like, now you're wearing you brought the Hansons, putting on the foil. What's your favorite part of the movie Slapshot? Who's your favorite character and the like? What's going on with the Slapshot?
Well, I got to go with I probably got to go with Paul Newman's character, Reg. I mean, he's the catalyst behind it. Obviously, love the Hanson brothers and just love that whole movie in general. I'm probably gonna have to watch it this week. I'll have plenty of time to do that, but it's just a great throwback movie. Back to when back without the helmets and the whole bit. Minor league hockey is so much fun to watch too. I really enjoy the movie.
Yeah, I remember playing junior hockey, riding the buses around Western Canada there, and we watch Slapshot like almost every road trip. It's crazy. The handsome Billy Charles boy from Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan. That one always made me laugh too. And it was getting to the National Hockey League. The season ended on, I think it was Friday night. There were some games of consequences, not up to the bitter end. The second night of the season when it all kind of the playoff seedings and all matched up. Lou, it's been a wild season, a lot of games going on here and there. But what's been your biggest surprise of the season to the end of it, and then your biggest disappointment? Like, what team did you go? Like, how the heck were they so bad this season?
Well, obviously, in my mind, the biggest surprise positive has got to be the Devils. Who would have thought they would have went from 63 points to 112 112 points? I mean, Jack Hughes has been a breakout star for him. Vanasek in goal. Right now, they're in position to, possibly make a run. Obviously, they've got that big opening round matchup with the Rangers, but I didn't see it coming. I thought they were going to be maybe battling for a playoff spot, around the 9th or 10th seed in the Eastern Conference. And look at them, just had a hell of a season. And right now, I just love the style of play, and they're young. They kind of remind me a little bit of the late 80s Detroit Red Wings when they were first coming onto the scene after a lot of years of disappointment, and so it's going to be interesting to see what they've got in the playoffs. On the other side, a couple of teams, but I'm going to go with Calgary. Markstrom, I thought, had a very disappointing year in goal. With the firepower they had, I got to be honest with you, Brent. I thought I had them pegged at least to go to the Final Four this year in the Stanley Cup before the season started. No way did I see him playing this bad, missing the playoffs altogether.
Lou, I'm obviously I'm Calgary centric a little bit here. I'm not a Calgary Flames fan by any means, but last year when they lost Tkachuk and they lost Gaudreau at some different circumstances when Gaudreau did the Flames a little bit dirty, and then Tkachuk said, well, you know what, I'm leaving too, so you might as well trade me. I thought that was a big blow for the Flames, but then when the GM Treliving made those deals and went out and got Kadri, and the trade he got to get Huberdeau, I thought, man, this guy's going to be up for executive of the year in Calgary, because I thought that trade that he made was going to put them over the top, and maybe they'd be a lot better hockey team than they were at the end of last season when they lost to the Oilers in the second round, the Battle of Alberta. But I thought that hockey team underachieved all year long, and I don't know what it was, because I still think it's not that Daryl Sutter became a over the past 12 I came around that way, and you don't know if it's just the age of the players and everything else that's going on. You just wonder how it happened and what happened in Calgary. But yeah, I agree with you. That Calgary team, they were a huge disappointment throughout the National Hockey League. And you talk about Hughes in New Jersey, and I agree with you 100% that he had the kind of year that if McDavid didn't have the year that he had, he'd be up for for a Hart Trophy, because that kid is I don't know where the DNA comes from with that Hughes family, because they keep hopping up all over the National Hockey League. But that Hughes family, that Hughes kid in Jersey, he's something else.
Boy, he sure is. It's funny you mentioned the family DNA. It reminds me a little bit of the Miller family back in the 80s and 90s. But I think these young men are better. And, like I said, it's going to be fun to watch them play in the tournament. Now we'll see how they handle the pressure and the spotlight, that being the Devils. And, I'm sure we'll talk about that in a moment. But it's, I love the play of the Devils. I'm not a big Devils fan, but, I like good hockey, and they played it.
And that's the thing. Everybody's so used to Devils of the 90s there, where the left wing lock, the neutral zone trap, and they had the defense of Niedermeyer and Scott Stevens, and they had Brodeur in that, who would just, if the puck came in their zone, they block out, he'd shoot it down himself. And people seem to be set on that Devils way of hockey that it was back then, was so successful in the 90s. And that's, I kind of compare the Devils to the Baltimore Ravens. How the Baltimore Ravens, their defensive style was the big thing. The Devils kind of played that same way of hockey, and they won 3 championships back in the 90s, and they were quite successful. But this Devils team flies a little bit, because you can't play that game anymore. And the way that Devils team can skate, and I think it's going to be one of the best series of the opening round, with that Battle of the Hudson with the Rangers. I don't even think the players dislike each other as much as the fan bases do.
No. And I kind of think that's true in a lot of cases in all of pro sports now. I mean, we could spend a whole show talking about that. What the Devils did to the Red Wings back in '95, when it looked like, Detroit won the President's Cup, and going in there, I thought they're going to blow away New Jersey, and they got swept. That hit me right between the eyes, and I still have a bad taste in my mouth about them, but I love Marty Brodeur. I love a good goalie play. But yeah, I agree with you on the style of play for the Devils. And you have to be a little more wide open now.
Well, that's the thing, Lou, is you watch these teams now, and these kids, and we're both getting a little bit up there in age, I guess, and you call them kids, and the way that these kids can skate nowadays, it's to a man, and the game is so much faster, and the way that they can, like, every kid, every player, they have to be able to skate in this league, because if you can't have a fourth line guy who can just bump and grind and dump it in nowadays, and guys who are just there to maybe drop the mitts once in a while. I do miss that part of the game a little bit, the rough and tumble style, like not so much the Hanson brothers style of hockey, but the way I do miss that style of play a little bit, but now the way these kids can skate, it's unbelievable.
Oh, it is, and it's like every other sport: bigger, faster, stronger. Talk to some of the ACHA coaches, and the days of having a 5'9" goalie, or a 5'10" defenseman, when you've got a guy 6'5" barreling down on you, those days are long gone. And those guys not only are big, but boy, they are so smooth on the ice. It is something to behold.
That's one conversation. Like, I'm an old goalie for myself, with playing in the Alberta Junior League and everything else. And now I don't know if the goalies are, like, they're better, obviously, but I don't know if the goalies are as skilled, because they're so big now in comparison. Like, every goalie's 6'4", 6'5". Yeah. We'll talk about Vasilevsky in a second, but you look at these goalies now, they're just the great big dudes who play the same way. They play the same position. There's not much style like there was back in the 80s and the 90s. Like, they're better, and the equipment's different a lot. But these guys who play goal nowadays are a lot different.
Oh, 100%. They're more in the butter, in the down position. They used to teach back in the day, you stand up, and now that's why from what I've heard and what I've watched, you want the guys that can, that have that frame, that can get up and still cover the net. And you're right. I agree with you 100%. I don't think like you said, they're a little better, but skill wise, I don't think it's much better.
No, like they're just big. Like it seems
Yeah.
to me like there's not a lot of Bill Ranford guys out there, and there's a lot of guys that
Yeah.
pucks hit them because they're big. It's a lot different. We could talk goaltending for Phil and I will talk goaltending with blue in the face, but the hammer came down earlier on this week. The Penguins, they disappointing end of their season. They had Sidney Crosby. They still have Evgeny Malkin, but the day after the season was done, actually they pretty much I think the decision was made the night they lost Chicago earlier on last week. I think it was on Wednesday night. They had to win 2 hockey games to make the playoffs. They had to win 2 hockey games against teams that didn't want to win hockey games in the Columbus Blue Jackets and Chicago Blackhawks. 2 teams were in the race for Connor Bedard for that draft pick, and the Penguins lost both those hockey games to 2 teams that didn't want to win. The Penguins went out and made the trade or the changes. They got rid of Hextall as the GM. They got rid of Brian Burke, whatever his position was. Brian Burke, one of the most overrated guys in hockey, in my opinion. We can get into that if you want to.
No,
but
I agree.
Changes with the Pens are happening. Lou, do you ever see that maybe Sidney Crosby might go to the Penguins, or the Penguins might go to Crosby, say, this isn't going to work, and I still have a little bit of hockey left in me?
Well, I got to tell you, I think a lot's going to come down to what they do in the offseason, because, I look at, they signed Malkin to that long deal. I mean, he's still going to count $6.5 million against the cap for the next 4 years, if I'm not mistaken. And I was listening to a couple of shows over the weekend saying and I watched the press conference, and boy, it sounds like they're going to try to win now. But they're an old team. I mean, next year they're going to try to make one last run. Man. But if they're going to do that, Brent, the first thing they got to do is get a goaltender. Now, Jari, if I'm a betting man, which I am, I don't think he's coming back. He's an unrestricted free agent, if I'm not mistaken.
Someone's going to overpay for him because there's a lack of goaltending around the league.
Well, yeah, but it's not. I don't think it's going to be the Penguins. If we're Detroit, as much as I like the guy, we'll give him Nedeljkovic. They could probably get him as a stopgap. But and I hear comparisons to when the Red Wings playoff streak got snapped. But Brent, this Penguins team is not like what the Red Wings team was. They to me, they've got Gunzel, Letang, Dumoulin. I mean, the list goes on and on. They've got the talent. I don't know if it was really the goaltending and that's it, but I think they're still in a win now mode. But to your point about Crosby, I got a feeling that if they don't do anything to, whatever they can do to strengthen it to make a run after next year, I could see him going and say, "Hey, fellas, it's time for me to move on." And he may do it.
Well, and the thing is he has a manageable contract for a lot of hockey teams at that $8.7 million. Like he's quite underpaid for, and he's still a great hockey player with a competitive spirit and everything else. I think that he might go, you know what, I'm just as, I don't want to go the wayside like Jonathan Toews did. Toews a different situation, obviously, with the long COVID and the way he's not able to make it go anymore. But he's, I think he's just as or better than Patrick Kane is with the Rangers, who's unrestricted. He's going to get, like, I don't think Kane's going to get a $10 million contract, but he'll get a 3 years, probably at 6 or 7. Right. But you can get a Crosby at that kind of money already. Why wouldn't you? And then maybe make Pittsburgh pay a little bit of that dough, because salary cap is tough to do. And like you said, with Detroit, it's a lot different because there was no cap back then when they were able to make deals and wheel and deal and get guys here and there. Yeah, I don't know what because Crosby is such a competitive guy, and the way he's been so great for so long, and to make the playoffs 16 years in a row, and then this year to lose out, man, and especially when they, like you said, they're in win now mode somehow, and they just didn't do it. Like that's like we could have talked about that for disappointing teams as well. Right. The Pittsburgh Penguins were a disappointing team to me. Like when you have 2 of the top guys to ever play the game on your team that are still producing, because I think they both played 81, 82 games this year. Like they didn't miss out, and to not make the playoffs with those 2 guys on your team and an aging Letang who's still serviceable. That Penguins team with Brian Burke, I don't know what this love affair with Brian Burke, the National Hockey League, has, because the only time he's ever actually won, Lou, and you'll probably remember this for sure, but was when they had in Anaheim. But they had 2 guys by the name of Niedermeyer and Pronger on defense. Yeah. I mean, I could have coached that team or GM that team and won myself a Stanley Cup. I don't know what the love affair with Brian Burke really is.
I don't know if they just got his name to put fannies in the seats, but yeah. And the crazy thing is, Brent, he'll be on TSN or wherever tomorrow somewhere commentating on the play, or they'll get him on the Hockey Network here in the States, and I'm with you. I never understood it. The guy puts his foot in his mouth more often than not, and getting back to Crosby, he's got, after this next year, he'll have 1 year left on his contract. And, he could, if they don't do anything, in my opinion, he would be easy to trade, because a lot of these teams that are close would love to have him, not only to put butts in the seats, because the guy's still going to be skilled. He can still get you 100 points. And, I just think that Pittsburgh, if they're not in win now mode next year, then they're going to have to blow it up. But I still think they got enough talent to get back into playoffs. And if they could pick up a good goaltender somehow in the offseason, who knows? They can get back into contention.
Yeah, no, like it's odd to me that you have that kind of a talent. That, and I just think this one kind of near and dear to my heart here, because Captain Canada, the golden goal, and everything else, and he still plays hard. And he's not Sid the Kid anymore, because he still plays hard, and I can't see why a team wouldn't go out there and get him. And the win now mode. And I always, Lou, and I think about this a lot, when teams think they're close, they're usually not.
Yeah.
It seems like you have a guy here, but who are those guys? Like everybody wants the next Cale Makar. Well, that's a once in a lifetime talent. Everybody wants this guy. And then teams that think that they're going to build around when they think they're going to build around a guy like Bedard, who might, like, you're hoping that a kid who hasn't played a game in the National Hockey League, when you're hoping a kid might be the difference for your team, you're so far away, you don't know what's going on.
Well, and that's been the talk for a while with Detroit. With Yzerman coming in, they're building a little slower and stockpiling the picks. But no, I 100% agree with you. And I look at this Pittsburgh team again, and I think, this is, I don't want to use the comparisons to Detroit, because when Detroit finally lost their run in 2015 or 2016, they didn't have the talent that Pittsburgh had. And and they were strapped with some bad contracts with guys that had no business getting those contracts. And I look at Pittsburgh's roster, and I see they don't have as many of those those bad contracts, to me, that Detroit had 7-8 years ago. But I'm with you on Crosby. I didn't like him early on, because didn't like his attitude, and of course the rivalry with Detroit back 13 years ago. But it's like anybody else, rival. I respect his play. The guy is a whiz, and Hall of Famer, 3 cups. I mean, how can you not like it? And it's one of those things. You'd love to have him on your team, but when he's not on your team, boy, you love to hate him sometimes. It's funny.
Lou, the Stanley Cup playoffs get going tomorrow, and we got some doozy matchups, right? Like most games, there's one series that I don't have a dog in the fight or a horse in the race whatsoever, and that's the Dallas, Minnesota. I mean, it's a franchise, two franchises that kind of mirror each other a little bit, because obviously Dallas is the old Minnesota North Stars, but that's one I don't think I've watched 3 Minnesota Wild games in my life. I cannot sink my teeth into that franchise, and it has nothing to do with against Minnesota. I've been there; it's a great place. I cannot sink my teeth into Minnesota Wild hockey games. I don't know what it is.
Well, I don't know how many Dallas Stars games I watched this year.
Yeah, there you go.
And boy, they seem to be the sexy pick to go a long ways, Dallas. And again, I have to plead ignorance on them as well. I've watched more of maybe what you would call the sexier teams like Edmonton and, obviously Vegas and, and of course the East Coast teams, which, it's where Detroit plays. I've watched more of them, but I'm with you on that one. I've got Dallas winning the series, but it wouldn't surprise me if Minnesota pulls off the upset.
There's a couple of matchups that I'm really intrigued by, and one is the Toronto Maple Leafs Tampa series. They met 3 times in a row. That's one that I'm really intrigued by a lot, because I actually think that this year, I think the Toronto Maple Leafs are actually going to pull this one off. Yeah. They've been poised to do this for it. Well, they haven't won a playoff round since 2004, I think it is. But they built this team. They spent a lot of money. They got some guys who can put the puck in the net. I don't know if their defense is as good. They just don't have that guy, and goaltending is there. But that's one series that might be a pickup. The only thing that might hold the Leafs back from getting past that first round, which they've been trying to do, this is the third time in a row that they faced Tampa, I think it is. But there's the COVID years and the bubble years. I don't really know how much those actually count. But if the Leafs don't get Vasilevsky, I think that they can win that series in about 5 games.
You know, it's funny, as I heard a stat yesterday on the NHL Network on Sirius XM. There are, I want to say, that of the 16 teams that are in the playoffs, 11 of them, there's 11 goalies with a combined 16 playoff games, Stanley Cup playoff games of experience, and I think Samsonov has 4 or 5. And I think that's one of the X factors. Vasilevsky, you know, what else can you say about him? He's, if not the best goalie on the planet, he's in the top 2. And, you know, another thing, though, on Tampa's side, I think they're going to miss Ryan McDonough, who's, you know, not with them anymore on the defensive side. And I know they've got Corey Perry, an X factor in this series, but, you know, I think Tampa's going to need Vasilevsky to be about like .930 save percentage to win it for him. I mean, I wouldn't put it past them. But, boy, I tell you, I agree with you. I finally think this is going to be Toronto's year. I think Marner and Matthews, I think they're finally going to be able to solve Tampa and solve that first-round roadblock.
Yeah, it's been crazy. My in-laws, they're huge Leafs fans, so they were like, when I got here tonight, they were grilling me about what my thoughts were, and then today I had some other people talking, and I think that the Leafs are actually going to pull it off this year. They're going to run juggernaut in Boston. We'll talk about them in a second, but the other one that's intriguing to me is that Kings Edmonton matchup. They met up last year in the first round, went 7 games. That one could have went either way. Different goaltender in net this year for the Kings. Jonathan Quick had a great run last year, throughout his career with the Kings, obviously, and that one went different. But McDavid right now, to me, Lou, he is on a different level altogether, and he sees, like, all season long. Like, we watched a lot of those games up here in Western Canada, and he's on all the time, and he just seems to be on a different level that I haven't seen in a long time. And the way he's just going, and then Draisaitl, who gets forgotten about, and he had himself a 125-point season. That Oilers team, if they can get adequate goaltending, above adequate goaltending with Stuart Skinner in net, the rookie in net, man, that Oilers team is gonna be tough to beat, because that McDavid's on another level right now.
Oh my God, yeah, 100%. You know, and I think in that series, Brent, a lot of it's going to come. You know, I know injuries have hit everybody, but you got a guy like Kevin Fiala who, from what I read, he was in a walking boot a couple of days ago. I mean, they don't have him. That's going to be tough. You know, they've been banged up, but I'm with you on Edmonton. They're so much fun to watch. You talk about youngsters that have really taken it to the next level. You mentioned it with those two. And, you know, I was thinking about first round series to watch that one. And of course, you touched on it earlier, you know, the Hudson River rivalry. I mean, if only we could get the kind of series that they had back in '94 when the Rangers won the Cup. You know,
the Messier guarantee. Yeah, there's people that listen to this right now that don't even know that '94 even existed, or that Mark Messier was even a player. Right? That's funny. It's funny how, because that's 30 years ago. All of a sudden, it's crazy how time flies like that with the National Hockey League and those legends. Yeah, that was a great series back then. And Marty Brodeur, man, like he was such a good goaltender.
For the Devils, my gosh, you know, Richter, you name it. You know, and getting back to Edmonton, I'm kind of rooting for him because, you know, I love Steve Yzerman. Don't get me wrong. I think he's doing great with Detroit. But Kenny Holland, to me, is, you know, he kind of got a bum rap for what he did towards the end. I mean, maybe some of it was deserved here in Detroit. But not only did he put together a Cup team before the salary cap, but he was able to get one done after in 2008. And, you know, I think he deserves a lot of credit for that, some that he doesn't get. Obviously, they had an unbelievable roster for 15, 16 years. But I part of me is really rooting for Edmonton, for him to make a deep run in the Stanley Cup playoffs, maybe get another ring, you know, with the Oilers.
Lou, like the Bruins went on unprecedented run, 64 wins. I think they finished with it. Whatever, like anything over 50 is unbelievable. Like, do you think that team? I mean, 2011 is a long time ago when they won that cup against Vancouver with the Brian Burke team that didn't do anything because second's the first loser. Do you think that this Bruins team can just keep going because they have some goaltending, they have the leadership, they got some young legs, and there's a reason why you win 64 games. Lou,
Right.
do you think that Bruins team is just destined to win this thing?
Boy, I don't. I wouldn't be so obviously. I wouldn't be surprised if they did. They remind me a lot, and I hate to keep referring to the Red Wings, but they remind me a lot of the 2002 team that was loaded. And but that 2002 Detroit team, I remember they lost the first two games of the opening round series at home to Vancouver, and it was like, oh my God, we're going to be another President's Cup team that gets bounced in the opening round. But as crazy as it sounds, I think they can. But ultimately, I don't have them picked to win the cup. So again, to me, Brent, the goaltending is going to be an issue, and I don't know. They've done great, but I don't know if it can hold up in the Stanley Cup playoffs. I mean, they've got Pasternak, Marchand. The list goes. You can go down the list of talent. They've had an unbelievable year, and they're quote unquote getting healthy. But yeah, I mean, could they win it? Sure. I just don't know if they're gonna.
Yeah, there's a reason why they only have the one and all those those great players you mentioned. There's only one for a reason. Now those guys are a little longer in tooth. I think that they're going to have a little bit of a tough series with. I don't think Florida's going to win, and because Florida's had a kind of a weird year with Paul Maurice under the helm the first year, and Paul Maurice was one of those guys. He's never really won anything. You go back to Hartford Whalers days, that's 30 years ago, that he didn't do anything there. Then he went to Winnipeg and hasn't really won a whole bunch. And how he keeps finding himself jobs over the years, I'm not quite sure with him. But it's one of those odd things that once you get into the hockey fraternity, you don't get to leave. But I just don't know if that Bruins team, and I don't know what it is. I just don't think they're going to win a Stanley Cup. Will they win the first round? Probably.
Yeah.
Will they beat the Leafs if the Leafs get the second round? You would have to think so, because that's just what the Leafs and the Bruins do. That's just how it all that's how it turns out. But there's just something about that team I don't like to get anywhere, and I can't put a finger on it. They've had a nice run, a great run, but like you talked about President's Cups, and I talked about it on a regular show with 1420 Dave. That does anybody really care about a President's Cup? Because you get a President's Cup, do you put it on your mantle or on your fireplace? Because we got a President's Cup. Probably not. Like it means so little.
It does nowadays, and I remember back in the day when they were giving it out, the players got to split $200,000 between them. What is that for these guys? That's nothing. I mean, they get what, $15,000 a piece. That's a week's of work for a lot of these guys. I'm with you on that. They're going to have the target on their back, and I don't know if they can handle it. And so, no, that's why I don't see Boston making the run all the way into June.
Yeah, I want to be able to put my finger on it. I want to be the breaking news, and I can't. I just don't know what it is. I want to be the guy that someone comes back. Brent and Lou said this, like, we didn't come up with, and I don't know what it is. I just don't have faith in them to win a Stanley Cup. Lou, we'll wrap her up here. It's been a lot of fun here at Last Call. Thank you once again for joining us. But before we get going here, give me your predictions of what's going to happen in the Stanley Cup playoffs and who's going to win the whole Mariana in your eyes.
Well, I'm going to tell you, I'm with you. I think Toronto is going to win their opening round series, and they are going to find another level of confidence. And I think they're going to beat Boston in the second round. And I think they're going to go all the way to the final. I think they're going to take care of business against the Rangers in the Eastern Conference Final. I think they're going to beat the Devils, and then they're going to go on. I think they're going to beat the Hurricanes. On the West, again, my heart is going to go with Edmonton. I think they're going to go to the Western Conference Finals. I think they're going to beat Vegas. Vegas, I wouldn't even be so. I think they're going to dispatch of the Jets, and then. But I think the Oilers are going to beat the Kings. But I think this is going to be the first time since 1989 when it was the Canadiens and the Flames. And I think Toronto is going to be hoisting that cup for the first time since 1966. They're going to win 4-2 over Edmonton in the Stanley Cup Finals.
Stanley Cup Finals. I'm not sure if my in-laws are watching in the other room next door. I'll have to tell Peter and James that's Captain Lou Extravaganza. That's his pick to win the Stanley Cup. But no, Lou, I like that pick. I like the thought of the Oilers getting there. I'm going to be on the opposite side of you. I think the two teams that you picked to go to the final are right there. It's been a long time, not since 1993, since the Canadiens beat the Los Angeles Kings on a Marty McSorley illegal stick back then. Remember that one? That's a lot. There's some trivia for the kids out there, right there. But I think that this is going to be the year that you're going to see a couple Canadian teams in the Stanley Cup final. I think the Rangers are going to go far. Colorado's still a team to beat, but they don't have the goaltending. I just don't see it because once again, there's an old saying: "You show me a good goalie, I'll show you a good coach." And I think that there's going to be a Calder or an Edmonton Stanley Cup champion, and I think you're going to see a guy like Stuart Skinner being a long list of goaltenders who are rookie goaltenders with their name on the Conn Smythe Trophy, because it's going to take a gargantuan effort for him to be that guy. Everybody's expecting McDavid to be the guy, but I think Stuart Skinner is going to be the X factor to win a Stanley Cup for the Edmonton Oilers, and I got the Oilers winning the Cup in about. Hey, why not go 7? We'll drag it right into the middle of July or the middle of June. Not? Let's do the Oilers beating the Leafs in 7 games. That's my pick.
Oh my God, this sounds like fun. Yeah, I like I said at the top, I don't see the love affair with Dallas, and I just don't. I see Toronto, once they get that monkey off their back, boy, I think they're going to go on a run, and Toronto, that city of Toronto, is going to go nuts.
The brother-in-law, he was already talking about how much tickets would cost. I said, yeah, you better take out another mortgage, man. It's going to be something else to even get into the building. It's going to be something to see. But no, it's going to be a lot of fun. It all gets going tomorrow night. There's a lot of great series that are having that first round. Like I said, for people who don't watch hockey, they don't know what they're missing in that first round of Stanley Cup playoffs, because there's nothing quite like it. A lot of series go 6-7 games, and it's the drama night in, night out, and it's nonstop from like it's 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock here, Mountain Standard Time, right on until midnight, basically for us. It's great drama. It just doesn't stop, and there's nothing better than Stanley Cup playoffs round 1.
Can't wait, boy! Starting tomorrow night. It's it's gonna be a great summer for playoff hockey, and I have a feeling we're gonna see a new Stanley Cup champion.
Lou, you got some stuff going on surgery-wise, and you got some big plans for your show. Fill us in what you got going on, what your plans are coming up with the Captain Lou Extravaganza.
Well, yeah, you mentioned it. I'm going in to get my foot cleaned up. I've got some issues with it, so I'm not gonna have my show Wednesday night because that's surgery day. And but starting next week on Monday, we're gonna do 3 shows a week at 10 a.m. Eastern time. Nice. It's going to be a half hour to 40 minutes. And, it's just going to be recapping of what's going on. We got plenty to talk about with baseball, Stanley Cup playoffs, NBA, you name it. And the draft coming up a lot for the NFL. And, it's going to be fun. I'm really looking forward to it. It's the Captain Lou Sports Network on YouTube. I invite you to subscribe to it. And Brent, maybe we can get you on one time in the morning and talk a little sports. We'll talk some Stanley Cup, and we'll see how well the baseball season's going for both of us too.
No, I got no problem with that, Lou. Always willing to help out and talk sports, and just we'll end up talking more than that half hour you want to talk for sure, because it's always a lot of fun talking. Thanks for coming on the very first last call. Appreciate it very much, because it's a little bit later there on a Sunday night, but we appreciate it very much for last call. Yeah, thank you very much, Lou. The 1420 last call brought to you by SeatGeek and SeatGeek.com. Use promo code 1420pod at SeatGeek.com today, and be sure to check out the Captain Lou Extravaganza and all the other shows on the Belly Up Network. Have a good night, Lou, and we'll talk to you again shortly, my friend.
You bet.
SeatGeek is the ticketing app for fans like Boomstick Lady. No free throw is safe from the roar of her sticks. SeatGeek helps her find a seat in the direct eye line of the shooter, so she can sit where her boomsticks make the biggest boom. Everybody okay? SeatGeek handles the tickets to sports, concerts, and more, so fans can fan.
You just listened to the 1420 Sports Bar Podcast. 4 beer with sports talk and a whole lot more. We are part of the Belly Up Media Network. Let's get into it.